Welcome to the Ruth Companion Podcast. I'm joined here by Jesse and Bobby. Jesse, we finally got you, man. It's been like 100 episodes in. We got you. Bobby was here like a month ago. Yeah. We had to re-record a podcast because we're like digital buffoons and we can't like keep our hands, steady. So anyways, we're excited today. We're jumping into the sermons that both of you guys have preached, Ruth 1 and Ruth 2. This is our study through the Advent season. I'm so excited for this conversation. We're going to be talking about how the Hallmark movies, they missed the mark, but the story of Ruth, the romantic story of Ruth, is the truest Christmas story. And Ruth is kind of a fascinating book to study during Advent season. So we're getting into all of that. But before we do, I have to ask one question that I've been begging to hear the answer to. Jesse, your daughter's name's Ruth.
Yes, it is.
Right? Yeah. And so what I want to know is, did you read Ruth, or was like even the text that we're in, did it influence you and Megan's decision to name your daughter Ruth?
Yeah, it totally did. And first off, I just have to shout out my daughter and apologize because how dare I preach and kick off Ruth, and I didn't even mention her name. I'm like, so that's a dad fail.
I was waiting for
it
to come out.
I know, yeah. So this is my formal apology to my daughter.
Yeah. Well, she's an active listener.
She is an active listener.
She's a subscriber.
Yes, faithfully. Yes. It totally is. So when Megan was pregnant, she was actually going through a Bible study through the book of Ruth, and we had been talking about names, and we were just having a discussion one day about the book of Ruth because that's what she was studying. And I'm like, hey, what do you think about Ruth for the name of our daughter? And I think both of us right away were like, yeah, we like that name. And we ended up looking it up and studying it. And that name means a companion, a loyal friend, and a vision of beauty.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's so rich. And
that's so good.
We had contemplated between Riley and Ruth. And we decided, like, we'll just wait until she's born and kind of make a decision in the hospital. And she's born. She came out crying, eyes wide awake. She was hungry. Just like the moment we saw her and her reaction, we're like, yeah, she's definitely a Ruth. And
that's so awesome.
Yeah, we decided on Ruth in the hospital. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. I love that. Well, and you don't have a daughter named Ruth, do you?
I don't.
Yeah.
No.
Son?
No.
Okay.
I have a Jacob.
Okay, a Jacob.
And there we go.
All right, that's for another podcast.
Yeah, one biblical name in there.
Two. We got an Eli, too.
That's right. Okay.
So, well, the question I want to start with for the both of you guys before we get into anything like too deep is Advent, Christmas time, fun time of year. There's all sorts of family traditions. I want to hear from the both of you guys. Is there anything you guys do as maybe a family, something that you look forward to, your kids look forward to, that like just like really like primes your heart for the holidays? And whether it's an Advent devotional, I'll let you explain. Second thing, maybe a funny or fun tradition you guys do that like no one knows about, but we're gonna share with the listeners now.
I love that.
That's good.
So Bobby, you're up first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
I think that one of the most fun things that my wife did. Shout out to my wife. They're the most. I think that wives are the most sentimental and in touch with all the the things.
Like Christmas would be so dry and boring.
Just a bunch of men
my wife.
sitting around a campfire.
Here's your one present.
Exactly.
There'd be no tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Now go do a chore.
I think that one of the traditions that my wife incorporated early on with our kids was she would painstakingly wrap up 25 different Christmas books, and she would put them under the tree, and each night the boys would get to go pick out one book, unwrap it, and she would read it to them.
Wow.
And so some of those were like fun, just like lighthearted Christmas stories, and some of them were like more like centralized, narrative story of Christmas. And then it would always culminate in just a really great story on Christmas Eve. That was like the heart of the Christmas story.
Yeah, man.
That's
and
commitment.
the boys would, it was,
That's commitment.
Yeah, it's a lot of wrapping. But that was just a really fun tradition that she came up with, or she saw somewhere. But it was hers, and she did it all through our kids.
That's sweet. How has that either continued or changed as the boys have gotten older?
Yeah, we don't do it anymore.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, Mom, this is like the 10th year. We own 250 Christmas books.
Our oldest son's in college, just in his jammies, just going down there and picking one up. No, we don't do it anymore. And sadly, I think that oftentimes like the youngest kid kind of gets the short end of the stick. I think that Cooper probably doesn't remember those as much as the older boys. But that was just really fun, a really rich time of like, getting the hot chocolate and climbing up on the couch and reading the story together before bed. So it was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. What about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, something rich, meaningful that we do. We started a couple of years ago as we bought an Advent wreath, and it's actually something we started doing on Sundays that we started last year.
Okay.
But each Sunday night we'll gather around the table, and I'm an ambiance guy, so we'll turn off most of the lights, have the Christmas tree, try and get a beautiful setting. And of course, every time, then our youngest is crying, or it's like it never goes the way that you expect it to.
Yeah.
Speaking of Hallmark movies, but get the ambiance just right, and we'll sit around the table, have our Advent wreath. We found a resource online that just talks a little bit about each of the focuses that week. So hope, joy, peace, and love.
Yeah.
And so we'll read that together, and then we'll read and you have it actually right there, the Jesus Storybook Bible.
Dude.
Which is just an incredible...
You preached out of that on Sunday.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, which, it ministers to my heart as much as my kids. But we'll read through the Jesus Storybook Bible, and then we'll light the candle, and then we'll go over to the piano and we'll sing a Christmas song together. And again, it sounds beautiful and sentimental. It's always chaos. A 9, 6, and 3-year-old, but it's become really special to us. And then just kind of goofy, fun Advent stuff. On Christmas morning, Megan started doing this a couple of years ago. We'll wrap the entryway into our living room with wrapping paper so that if you come out of the hallway, you can't see the living room.
Oh, wow.
And so Christmas morning, they'll get up and, they'll have to wait for us to get moving because, of course, they wake up really early. And then it's just like this, like a football team, like coming through the entrance. That's what it's like Christmas morning. They'll run through the wrapping paper and into the living room.
That's awesome.
It's always just like a special way to fun way to start the day.
No, I love that. No, I love that you guys shared that. One of the reasons why we do the companion podcast is so we can go deeper on things philosophically, theologically, but also practically. And so growing up, like in our house, like my folks were believers, but I didn't feel like the Christmas season, unfortunately, was all about Jesus. And I think that's relatable to actually many families. Yeah. And so just to hear, like, as men, husbands, fathers, like how to actually engage the Christmas time so that we can form against the counter narrative, which is it's Santa, and all the desserts and Christmas lights and all that stuff's great. Yeah. But what are you actively doing to like celebrate like, hey guys, like the king is coming, So speaking of the king is coming, let's jump into Ruth 1 and 2. I'm going to give you guys each the mic for like 30, 45 seconds. Give us like the Instagram like highlight reel of like your chapter, like what it was about, and then we'll like kind of dive into some of those themes that you share. So let's start with you since you preached first.
Yeah. We got to kick off Ruth chapter 1. And it's really setting the scene for the book, introducing the characters of Naomi and Moab, who have a famine in their homeland, of Bethlehem, the house of bread. I talked about that. If the house of bread has a famine, it ain't looking good.
Yep.
and so they flee Bethlehem and they go to Moab, enemy territory. And really in a period of 10 years, Naomi, this woman, she loses her husband. She loses her 2 sons. Her sons had gotten married to Ruth and Orpah, unable to get pregnant. Or the Bible doesn't tell us that they had kids. And so she loses her husband. She loses her sons. And she really comes to this place of brokenness, like I had talked about, a bitter theology that still believed that God existed, that God was powerful, but that God had abandoned her.
Right.
And so she decides to go back to her homeland and tells Ruth and Orpah, there's nothing for you. I have nothing to offer you. Leave me. And Orpah agrees to that, but Ruth refuses to leave her and says, where you go, I go. Your God will be my God. And I think really a main theme and a word that I talked about a lot in that message is the word chesed, this rich Hebrew word that really embodies love, generous action, faithfulness, the fruit of the Spirit. You really can't embody it in one word in the English dictionary. And ironically enough, Naomi she prays that the Lord's chesed would be over her, but it's actually Ruth who embodies that to Naomi by refusing to leave her. And so we really focused on the word hope, which is the first word for the week of Advent, and that's the title of this series is Roots of Hope, and recognizing that, which I think we get this wrong a lot in our, not just theology, but even how we think. And that is that hope, man, it's not wishful thinking, and it's not optimism, but hope is this rooted confidence in the character and promises of God. And seeing that even when there was no hope, that God had a plan, and in his plan, he was using Ruth and her chesed towards her mother-in-law to refuse to leave her. That Ruth is embodying that. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Was it interesting preparing for that sermon in light of you've probably never preached Ruth during Advent, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So like while you're like reading the text, like, I mean, real time, like your mind's probably thinking like, oh my gosh, like I got to like tie this into Christmas, but like you don't have to try that hard.
No, you don't. Yeah. And that's what's so fascinating, how the text comes alive as it being a foreshadowing for later downstream when Christ comes.
Yeah, man.
And that we see when things look the darkest, that's where hope starts to enter the scene.
Yep.
And so, when Ryan first told us, we're going to go through Ruth, I'm like, that kind of feels a little random. Like, why Ruth? Like, let's just stick to the script and, read the story of baby Jesus being born.
Great narrative in Luke.
Like, let's just camp out in Luke. But as I began to study the text and read commentaries, it's like, wow, this is beautiful in the way that it's setting up the scene for later on when Jesus will come.
Yeah. So we barely have to turn the page. Scene 2 happens. Jesse just recaps scene 1. Scene 2. Bobby, take it away.
Yeah. What I love is in the Jesus Storybook Bible, you didn't mention this in your sermon, and I think that I mentioned it in mine, but the Jesus Storybook Bible comes back to that idea of Hesed. I Americanized it for us, so I don't. But the idea of Chesed, it captures it with the words that it's God's never stopping, never giving up, always and forever love. And I just love that. It just keeps coming back to those words, like, but God was pursuing his people with a never stopping, never giving up, always and forever love. And that theme, yes, runs through this whole book, in this book, like as we've been going through this, like preparing for Advent, it's like, I don't know if you can see this, Sean, but like my Bible in like Ruth is just like, it's like, there are very few things that are like not underlined or highlighted or notes or something, whatever. Like there's just so much in here. And so what we see in chapter 2, when I talked about this last Sunday, is that we see the story of two women, right? We see the story of Ruth and we see the story of Naomi. Same God, same life story that they've walked through, same land that they're living in, same poverty that they're living in. And one has peace and one does not. And I think that that's our story, as believers. We look around and it's like, why do some people have peace and other people do not? Though they walk through the exact same circumstances. And so that's what I got to unpack a little bit. And it was so fun. The story in Ruth 2, it starts out with, let's see. It starts, I actually saved the first verse for later in my sermon, because the first verse kind of like spoils the punch a little bit. It just says, now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. So it kind of just shows you the cards up front. But then you're introduced to this Boaz guy as Ruth is out kind of like as a person with not a high social standing is out like getting the scraps from the fields. After the harvesters go through, there's like provision in the law for people to go through and get like the leftovers, like the scraps. So she's doing that, and suddenly she notices that the eyes of Boaz are on her. And, I talked about it a little bit. It seems like something might have gone down where she was actually leaving the field of Boaz to go somewhere else. And yet Boaz goes and talks with her. And they have this conversation where he invites her to stay. He says, like, no, I want you to get water here. I want you to be blessed as you are on my land. He then has lunch with her and the rest of the workers. And there's some cool things that happen there. And then she goes back and presents the story to Naomi, who is still sad, bitter at home. She goes back and shares the story of being in the field. And the funny thing is she saves the name of whose field it was till the very end. She's like, I was in the field and I was gleaning, and it was the field of, and it's like everyone leans in and it's like Boaz. And Naomi just comes alive. Like that's the turning point for Naomi. And I think that what the beauty in that is that like I talked about, like, when we are people of peace, it actually inspires other people to be people of peace. And this kind of peace is like what I talked about in my sermon is like, it's not like peace like the world gives. Jesus says, like, I leave you with my peace, and it's not the same that the world gives. So like you look up what peace is, and it's like, oh man, an absence from troubles,
from problems,
right?
Yeah.
And it's like that's not what this is. This is far deeper, and the way that we activate that peace that actually lies dormant inside all of us as believers is through the Spirit.
Yeah.
Like the peace of God is listed as one of the fruit of the Spirit. It's part of the fruit of the Spirit. And it's not like 9 things, some of them I might experience and some of them I might not. It's almost like, in my sermon, I said like it is, you could almost like hyphenate all of those. Like it's like what I'm experiencing is the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control right now. It's a package, and peace is part of the package that we get when we allow the Spirit to live in and through our lives.
Yeah. That's so good. 2 of the themes that you guys both hit on that I want to dive into, and we'll all kind of take turns sharing how we see these 2 themes working their way out, is God's sovereignty and God's redemptive plan. Mm-hmm. And I mean, first and foremost, the word redemption in a variety of different verbs shows up 23 times. But I think it's easy to see God's sovereignty as you almost look at all the chapters together. However, there's actually sovereignty happening even just in the first 2 chapters. Totally. And when we read our Bibles, it's easy for us to kind of put on our modern glasses, look at the text and be like, okay, like look at the end of the story. God showed up. Oh, good. Thank you for Boaz. But in reality, God's showing up every single point of the way. Mm-hmm. And I think he does that in our own life. Mm-hmm. And while we want to read all 4 scenes, that's not what we're doing today. We're only going to talk about scene 1 and scene 2. So let's just take the next few minutes to talk about maybe some areas where, while you guys were studying the text, and maybe even from my own vantage point, where we see God's sovereignty just on like immense display amidst a really messy story. And then also God leaving like redemptive, like breadcrumbs in this story. So one of you guys take it away, but one of those themes that just like really surprised you as you were preparing to teach this text.
I would jump in and I would say one of the most significant, and I'll go off of it more than I did in my sermon, but one of the most significant lines in this text is there's a part early on in chapter 2. Well, let me read it here. A part early on in chapter 2 where Naomi is, where actually I'm not going to read it. I can't find it. Where Ruth is...
Too many pages.
too many pages. There are too many words in this book. Where Ruth is in the field, and it says, now it just so happened, and it came to pass that Boaz, it used the word like, oh, it came to pass. And the original, like I said, like the original meaning of that is like the original language, Hebrew language is, and Ruth's chanced. And it's like hyperbolic language, and like hyperbolic, ironic language, almost to say like, oh, you probably think that it's like chance in her. Oh, look, her chanced here, but it's like, oh no, God's at work in all of these things in our lives, you know, I think that oftentimes when I think that God's going to show up, it's going to be like in this super powerful way. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's obviously God. And really the way that he likes to work is so subtly and in the minute details of our stories, where he doesn't show up and it's like, oh my gosh, that was incredible. But it's like, oh man, my chance. And, you know, there was a very small chance that that would have happened. But actually, I wonder if God was behind that. And so I think that that's what you see a lot in those first 2 chapters is like, man, even, you know, where Naomi is like, let's go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, go back.
Yeah.
Go back. Go back to where God's at work. Go back to where you know, we talk about like the nostalgia. Like, go back to where all began, Naomi. Go back there because that's where God's at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's why I think that God's redemptive plan and his sovereignty is easy to talk about in theoreticals, but it is so difficult when you can't see what's on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right, that she didn't know the sovereignty of God, his plan in what was waiting for Naomi through Ruth and eventually Boaz when they would return to Bethlehem. But all that she can see is the pain of loss, the pain of feeling like there's no future for her. But little did she know what was on the other side. And so I think it's so often where we really have to talk about or address is what do we do in the middle of that? Here's the theoretical of God's sovereignty and redemptive plan. Here's the process, and then here's the other side of when things come into light, when there's clarity, when we are able to look back and see, oh, God was in control. He was sovereign. But realizing, like Naomi, like you said, Naomi didn't have that full picture in Ruth chapter 1.
Yeah.
At that point of time, she lost everything and had no hope.
Yep.
So,
and really quick, what I love is like God's sovereignty is so big that if Naomi and Ruth would have chose to stay in Moab,
yeah, God
they
would
would
have
have
made
still
a
had
way.
a great story.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. An area that just like lights me up, that I feel like where we see God just being the masterful storyteller and story writer is in the life of Boaz. Like Boaz is like a rarity in the Bible. Boaz is an individual who gets a uniformly like positive portrayal, whereas like most characters in the Bible, even the really good ones, they have their fall. And Boaz just doesn't have that. Like he ultimately is a demonstration and embodiment of hesed, of kindness. Yes. And one thing that happens around the Christmas time that I want to point out that I think relates to Boaz is Christmas time is when we start to think about all of our family members. And there's like this inventory mental checklist like, ooh, I haven't talked to, Aunt Sally in a while. Like, I hope things aren't awkward at Christmas. Or like, ooh, forgot to buy a gift for Dad. I wonder what he wants. Oh, he wouldn't mind if I didn't get one. We have past narratives and drama and trauma that we like rehearse in our mind that then affect how we operate in the future. And I think Boaz actually has some that is on display. So Boaz's mom was Rahab. And Rahab was actually a prostitute. And she was a prostitute that then was redeemed herself. And so Boaz would have known this. He would have had some context of who his mother was, some of her life, some of that sin. And so just imagine for a second, like put yourself in his shoes, and like maybe it's embarrassment or just like a little bit of baggage. Like, man, my mom like had a really like rough upbringing. You see Ruth, and you see how the same characteristics of Rahab, she hid people kind of like in her basement.
Yes.
She was loyal.
Yeah, courage.
She was courageous.
Yeah.
She was gentle. He looks and he sees Ruth and he goes, that is a beautiful woman. He sees the internal value of who Ruth is, and all Ruth feels is broken. And so there's something about like, even God uses like the drama of our past to shape who we are for the present, to then inform how we move out into the future. And I just love that with Boaz. Isn't
That's
that
beautiful?
Yeah. It's so exciting.
Powerful.
And what's great about that is as we think about like our own Christmas and some of the things that like might be stressing us out, and there's those of us who have really great family makeups, and like I'm blessed, I'm a part of a really great family, but there's still those awkward tensions, right? Every single one of those tensions is an opportunity and invitation for God to redeem that in the same way that he did with Boaz and Ruth. So I love that. Let's talk a little bit about redemption, where we see redemption playing itself out in these first 2 chapters. Any thoughts, Bobby?
Why don't you start in chapter 1?
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Yeah. So redemption, God's redemption.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. You see, again, the sovereignty of God play out in Naomi being hopeless, having no hope for the future. And you see really the redemption, the beginning stages of redemption begin to play out through Ruth.
Yeah.
And when Naomi had no hope, when Naomi had no sight of the future, redemption is being worked out through her daughter-in-law who refuses to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in chapter 2, what I love is, I know that I don't think that you touched on this, Jesse, but as I was looking into commentaries about Ruth, the person, Ruth's like come to Jesus moment is in Ruth chapter 1, where she says, I will go with you. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. And then she goes on to say, and if I don't, like something to the basic effect of, if I do not stay with you, Naomi, let the Lord judge me harshly. But she invokes like the covenant name of God. She uses Yahweh. And so at that point, a lot of commentators say like that's the point that Naomi goes from being an outsider to the family of God to an insider. And then to watch her walk in faith into the field and begin to glean, and to have Boaz, like there's the redemption of Ruth as a person, but then there's the redemption of Ruth's story, which is she's in the field gleaning. Boaz sees her, and I mean, she would have looked different than the other women. Like she's a Moabitess.
Yeah, she's a different
Right?
race.
Right.
Yeah.
She's a different race. And for him to like recognize the qualities of a follower of Yahweh in her, like if you look at this passage, it's like, look at the fruit of the Spirit. Are these not the qualities of Ruth? Love, joy,
Yeah, right.
peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That's who she is. And while it's not stated explicitly that she was a person that had the privilege in the Old Testament of being indwelled by the Holy Spirit, like that list is short, right? And the Spirit would come and go. It doesn't say that she was filled with the Spirit, and yet we can't rule it out. Like Boaz saw something in her that was a distinguishing mark of the followers of Yahweh. And that was where he just began to be drawn to her as a person.
Yeah, it's so good, Bobby. We're going to save like the kinsman redeemer, like main topic for Ryan. We'll let him knock that out of the park. But one thing I just have to say on that, because we're kind of talking about like the character development of like Boaz, and I didn't know this until we started studying for this sermon series, is if you were a kinsman redeemer, what would happen is you would marry the woman, and then you would, in essence, get the land that her husband or family owned at a very affordable price. But additionally, in honor of the man who died, if you had children when Boaz had children with Ruth, the children would actually take the name of Ruth's dead husband, not Boaz. That's part of the condition, is because you're carrying on the lineage. And so part of the redemption is, while Ruth's husband died, God was like, I'm still going to write the story through the same people no matter what happens. And so again, redemption and sovereignty. But even more so, I think a redemptive quality of Boaz is, think about the humility there. Think about the tendency to want to play the hero in the story. And Boaz his heart was submitted to the ultimate king, that he was willing to then help facilitate via his offspring the ushering in of the true king that Israel, in just chapters before Ruth, they so desperately wanted. And I find that to be such an interesting and encouraging testimony of who Boaz was as a man. Is, are you willing to see and help facilitate the kingdom of God come, even if it doesn't have your name on it? And think about, like, we give presents at Christmas time, and it's like there's a little bit of even gift giving where it's like we get to write our name on it, right? It's like
Totally.
it's from me. But Boaz was giving a gift that he didn't sign.
Yeah.
And he was giving his whole self to Ruth so that she could ultimately have security and trust and all the qualities we like in Advent.
Yeah. Well, I think what's back to what you were saying too about who his mother was and how him experiencing redemption in his mother might give him the perspective in how he saw Ruth and the circumstances that he found himself in. I think it just goes back to the more aware you are of the grace you've been given, the more grace you have for other people, the more aware you are of the redemption that's happened around you, in your family, in your life, that the more awareness you have through other people and how that might have played in his perspective and the way he engaged is just powerful.
And really quick, like the fact that there are these Jewish customs and traditions and ways that the law plays out to provide a kinsman redeemer that apply to someone who is from Moab.
Right.
Like, that's how far God's Hesed love goes. Is it like it transcends the people of God to the outside people, and it brings them in as full heirs of everything.
Yeah. Well, you see how redemption affects other people too, because it says at the end of Ruth chapter 1 how Naomi returning caused a stir. So clearly there's involvement from people from the town of like what's happening. This woman who had left has come back. Clearly they're going to take notice. Your husband died. Your sons have died. Now you're here with your daughter-in-law. And so how redemption also works its way out into other people taking notice is powerful to see.
Yeah. It's good. And just to kind of put like an encapsulating like thought on that, like where my heart just like lands and I'm just so thrilled in reading Ruth and how it relates to our present day is like what happened to Ruth had to be her like plan D, E, or F. Like it was not her like her number one choice. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it was God's plan A. He had the whole thing like in his palm. And I would just say like as an encouragement to anyone listening, like there are people and we know of them and we're walking with them through immense difficulty and pain. And to hold the tension that like if you're still in like the messy middle, you're still in the middle. And God has a plan that whether it's on this side of heaven or not, will ultimately be the redemption of all things. And that's the beautiful nature of like the season of Advent. We're celebrating the King came, but the King is coming. And the King is coming again. And we can hold on to the eternal hope of that truth. So we just talked about like some theological nuggets, dove deeper on a theological level with the book of Ruth. I want to shift us into like the season we're in, like what's actually going on. It's in the beginning of December. We're talking about Christmas. And I think there's some really fascinating ways that Ruth interacts with and informs our current cultural moment as it relates to how we celebrate Christmas. And I just want to like unpack this with you guys because I just want to get your take. So as I was thinking about this, one of the most like classic kind of Christmas tropes is like Hallmark movies. And I remember growing up, I think it was channel 38 ABC Family. My mom and I, Karen, we'd sit down on the couch with hot cocoa, candy canes. And
You don't call your mom Karen, by the way.
I don't.
Call her mom.
But I like telling people that my mom's name's Karen because like speaking of like meaningful names, my mom's not a Karen.
She can make people feel bad.
Oh yeah,
You're redeeming. Speaking of redemption,
yes,
you're redeeming the name.
Yeah. So we gotta make the name Karen, good again. So my mom called me up and she's like, do you know people are using my name in a derogatory way? I was like, I think it's the internet, Mom. I think it's just stay off the internet. But anyways, we digress. But there's this trope around Hallmark movies, and I had to look this up so I could actually get the stat. But 70% of all Hallmark movies are told from a woman's perspective. And I think it's fascinating that the book of Ruth is the only book in the Bible told from a woman's perspective outside of Esther, but Ruth is told in the first person. And so I think as we think about the story of Ruth, and it really is a romantic story that's told over these 4 scenes, it kind of is almost like the true original Hallmark movie. However, Hallmark movies miss the mark. And they miss the mark
yeah.
because what tends to happen is they tend to be more like this emotional vacation we take that, they're about comfort and predictable storylines and nostalgia and romance and seasonal magic. And they miss kind of these low moments. That's where the book of Ruth is comforting to us people who are humans.
Yeah, the process.
Yes, the pain and the agony. And so let's just kind of riff on this for a little bit. How are you guys seeing, or how does that thought of like Hallmark has almost like messed with our minds a little bit to tell us that like the meaning of the season is things it's not, and then maybe how Ruth counteracts that to help us actually see like the truest narrative for the season? Like, you have any thoughts, Jesse?
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously I talked about this in my message, and I feel like I've talked about this about Christian movies as well, that it bugs me sometimes.
No, Christian movies?
Yes, because it's like my life was falling apart. I gave my life to Jesus, and now everything works out the way that I want it to, and it all comes together. And it's like, I've just found in my life and many of the people I've talked to, that's not how it goes.
Right.
And so I think there is some good, even in the sense of watching a Hallmark movie, that to have a desire for a happy ending, for things to work out, for things to end up for the good. I think it's actually good. And I think that's a desire that's from God that we shouldn't have shame around, to desire good things, to desire for our life to work out the way that we want it to have a happy ending. But I think what happens is it causes us then to fall into the trap of idealism.
Yeah.
I have these ideals for my family dynamics, for what I want Christmas morning to look like, how I want everyone to interact with each other. And the thing is if we're caught in the trap of idealism, then we're only set up for unmet expectations, for discouragement, because the reality is life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And that's what's so comforting about Ruth, is that it shows us that reality, that life is very much full of pain. It's met with unmet expectations. It's met with things not going the way that we had planned or expected them to. And so what do we do with that tension? And that's where I do think there's some good in some of these films, where it's like there is a happy ending, but the happy ending is not because I'm in my flannel jacket and I got my hot cocoa and our family's sitting around singing a Christmas carol. It's actually that because of Jesus, he will make all things new, and that this pain in my life, these unmet expectations, won't last forever.
Yeah.
And I think when we're able to live from that place, we can actually then still experience hope, joy, peace, meaningful Christmas season in the middle of those things.
That's good. Yeah, and I don't think Naomi or Ruth didn't struggle with like the thing that we feel like we have, like that nostalgia, like that sentimental like longing for the past. Like we talked about this before we hit record, but imagine what like Christmas morning was like, and well, it would have been a lot different for them, period. But how much different like celebrating even an annual celebration of in their culture would have been, thinking about, man, hey, totally. Mother-in-law, remember just a year ago when we had our husbands? Like that same problem existed for them as it does for us. And there was a point in which Ruth chapter 1 was the only story they knew. But Ruth chapter 2 is a thing, and it's a reality. And I think the truth is that exists for us too.
Even the interesting thing is at the end of Ruth chapter 2, to the original 1000 BC reader, there's actually this pause where it alludes to the fact that Ruth, like after this initial buzz and the butterflies of like, ooh, this Boaz guy, like she just continued gleaning, and it seems like that fizzled, like that hope of the kinsman redeemer had fizzled. And so it's again, it's like, oh, this is the reality of life, is that it is filled with ups and downs and periods of waiting, right? And I think that like, you say like, man, like Hallmark movies are kind of, they're almost like, when we scroll Instagram or whatever, it's like you see this idealistic snapshot of someone's life. A Hallmark movie is almost like you get the full story and you're like, oh my gosh, these other people's lives are so amazing. Like my carpet has sap all over it from my stupid tree.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I feel that. I feel that. Yeah.
It's like no one in the movie is cleaning sap out of the carpet for 2.5 hours.
Our first Christmas tree we got, it was a 500 square foot apartment on the 3rd floor, and it was way too big, and it fell over in the middle of the night. I think that's more realistic.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It
That is more realistic.
So,
Yeah, and I think we're all suckers for nostalgia because it's kind of a shadow of the real thing. Like the real thing underneath the surface, I think that we just need to like talk about is we're homesick.
totally.
Like we all want a kinsman redeemer. We all want a Boaz in our life. Because one, we're foreigners in a land that's not our home.
Yep.
And so I think the story of Ruth and how it overlays with Hallmark movies, it's, to your point, Jesse, it's like Hallmark movies innately, like they're not bad. It's just that they missed the mark. I heard it said one time that the problem with sin is sin almost works, right? Like
That's really good.
Like,
That's really good.
like that's the dangerous
Yeah.
thing about
So
sin.
true.
Like
Wow.
like Satan like did that as a snake in the garden. Like he told Eve a half truth. Like half of it was right.
Yep.
Half of it was wrong.
Yep.
It was still wrong ultimately.
Which are the scariest kinds of lies.
They are.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're not careful, you can fall into the trap of some half truths around Christmas. And like one of those half truths is that gentle optimism or holding nostalgia will ultimately satisfy the homesickness you experience this holiday. The truth is the hope of Jesus is the only thing that will.
Totally.
And so like what does it look like to sink our teeth into that? Like what does it look like to sink our teeth into Jesus is the actual real season for Christmas? I mean, open Matthew chapter 1 and start reading, the traditional, if you will, Advent story.
Yep.
You get 3/4 of the way through the genealogy, and who do we run into? Oh, hey, look, there's Ruth and Boaz.
Yeah.
And so there was pain and hurt amidst the greatest gift that will ever be given to you, Jesus Christ, born as a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
That's good.
that just warms me up.
Yep. Can I say something about that really quick? I
Yeah.
think that oftentimes, like, I remember in your sermon, you said, "Man, adult Christmas sucks," and you just like said it, and I was like, "Yeah, that's kind of true." Because here's what I think happens: is we grow up with our parents shielding us from like all of the hardship in the world, and we just get to like come down the stairs and see the gifts, and that's the only thing that exists in our world.
Yeah, that's good, Bobby.
And so then as parents, it's up to us to shield our kids from like what's going on in the world and atrocities and what's going on with, grandma and her like anger issues. And like we're trying to shield our kids from that to allow them to live in this state of innocence. And what we long for is to get back there, and not necessarily to be kids again, but to live in this world, like I talked about in my sermon, of shalom, where it's not just, hey, I'm doing pretty good inside, but it's like the entire cosmos is right. Like not just like people are relationally right with one another, but like our bodies are whole, our relationships are restored, the grass is restored, the trees are restored, like all of the cosmos is singing to the glory of God. That's what our hearts long for. And I think that we try to give our kids a picture of that on Christmas morning. And so then as adults, like knowing the horrors of what's behind the curtain, shielding that from our kids to allow them to have a moment of shalom on a Christmas morning is what we long for.
Wow,
Yeah,
man.
that's good.
Wow,
That's really
man.
good. I think a way that I think about practically some of these things is what's supplemental versus what's sustenance. And so a desire for things to go rightly, for everyone to gather together, for things to go, the tradition we do every year, we go and get a Christmas tree and we have this experience. I want all the kids to get along. Like those are good desires. And I think if I hold it in the right place in my heart, that this is a supplemental thing. This is a fun thing, but my foundation, my sustenance, my foundation isn't rooted in that. And I think here's the reality that I talked a little bit in my message is the thing we have to acknowledge about pain or when things don't go our way is that it naturally reveals whether we have elevated some of these things too highly. That when things don't go our way, when there is pain, when things are less than ideal, it reveals, are these things that I look forward to, or are these things that I have put really like my joy and my ability to have hope being rooted in those? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's good. But practically speaking, something else that I didn't get to share at the beginning, like what's one thing we do for Advent season?
How rude of us. We didn't ask you.
Oh, it's all right.
Man.
It's all right. I wasn't expecting to
the
come
ball.
back. But one of the things that we do is my wife got these really cool like Advent blocks. So they sit on our mantle, and there's 25 of them, and there's a star on one side and the world on the other. And it's like, figuratively speaking, like the star like coming to earth. Jesus coming to earth.
Cool, yeah.
And so every single day there's a Advent devotional that goes along with the symbol. And so it takes you through the entire Old Testament all the way up to Jesus' birth. And our kids like love going through it. They hold the blocks, and they always make sure they match up like day 3 to day 3, and like, you know, the rainbow to the rainbow. And well, what's funny is, and I love that you brought the Jesus Storybook Bible out, because I think one thing having kids has like taught me is, at the end of the day, like I'm still like 6-year-old Sean. Like I might be just like a touch bit smarter, and like I can grow like some spotty facial hair. But I'm
It's getting better.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
I
it's
appreciate
getting
it.
better.
I appreciate it. Not like Jesse's. Jesse's a beautiful, beautiful beard. But
I received that.
Good. One of the things though that going through the Advent devotional with Jones has done for me was it put me in motion of the story that God wrote. And it reminded me, and I think unveiled to me, that like God's still writing the story. And unfortunately, some of us don't realize that the Advent is actually happening all year round. And yeah, we celebrate the Advent season. It's 4 weeks, and it falls in the church calendar, and it preaches well and all that. But I think the truest story is like, it's actually happening 365. And sometimes Christmas is just the only time we actually slow down enough to celebrate Christmas. But Christmas is Christ coming. And that's something to celebrate every single day. And it kind of reminds me, like, I feel like Christmas is almost like awkward to engage with sometimes, because it's like, have you ever been in the airport and there's like those flat treadmill looking things, and like it catches you off guard, and you get to the end of it and you hit the regular road. Sometimes that's the holiday season, is you're on the treadmill of life, and then you hit the actual ground that's the firm foundation, and you're like, whoa. And it's just like, it's a jolt to the system, because you didn't realize how sped up and hurried life was. And so as we last year read the Advent devotional, it was interesting as we came to the close of December 25th and we closed the book, Jones was like, what's tomorrow? And I feel like,
really good.
I feel like that just is, that's the question. And that's the same question Ruth was asking, is what's tomorrow? And when we stop asking what's tomorrow, we start believing maybe in the Hallmark storyline, which is predictable endings. And the beautiful thing is, we have a sure hope of a predictable ending, which is eternal life. But God's having fun with us if you will engage. That the unpredictable storyline of your life is still being written.
And you know, even as you ask that question, like, what's tomorrow? Imagine the way that the two women would have asked that question differently. Naomi with a downcast face, like, I wonder what tomorrow holds. Like, not believing the best in God. And Ruth, you know, being like, what's tomorrow? Because I believe that he's going to show up. And it may look like my plan D, but I believe that he's going to show up. And he's going to redeem not just my story, not just my mother-in-law's story, but my land, like the land. He's going to redeem everything. It's. I think that so much is in how we ask that question.
Yeah. I think Advent has become meaningful to many of us because, like you said, we choose to slow down. But I think what's happening is we're becoming more aware of the reality that God has drawn near to us. And you're exactly right. Why do we choose to only do this for a season or a period of time? Because that reality is true. And how much more would that affect the way that we lived, interacted with people, and our perspective on things if we actually lived with that awareness that God is drawn near and his redemptive plan, you know, even in the middle of whatever it is we're walking through.
And two, like, how much do our decisions today like impact the generations of faith? I mean, you're our young adults director and oversee and cast vision for high school and college, and like as people are like starting their life. And it's interesting. Like one thing I love about young adults right now is they're just on fire for Jesus, but two, like I feel like while they know that they don't know what the future holds, they leave room for the vision to be big enough to believe that God could do incredible things. And one of the areas you see that is I think Ruth had the ability to hold on to long vision while also being in touch with temporal circumstances, because she went on to be King David's great-great-grandmother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
the very thing, like the talk of the town, the talk of the community at the watering hole is like, man, when are we going to get a king? And Ruth's like, man, I don't know. My circumstances stink. I could use a king. And then it's through her very own body that the promise prophesied King David would come via her bloodline. And so it's like not allowing our temporal circumstances to diminish our hope to have long vision, that like via our own children, great things, great kingdom things could happen. And that will only happen if we truly hold and grasp the true meaning of Advent and celebrate that the king is coming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good because we talk about, not falling in the trap of idealism, but then on the other side is falling in the trap of cynicism.
Yes.
Where it's always going to be this way, no hope, living with big vision and dreams, believing that if God is writing my story and he is making all things new, that I can choose to hope again, to dream again, that God is working all things out. Because, I think when you've experienced enough pain, the temptation is to lose hope.
And I may not even live to see that, the fruition of it, right?
Yeah.
But
But the decisions you've made and the stake you draw on the ground now.
Yeah. But one day to be able to look back, like at the end of your life, you probably see a sliver of what God did through you. But I think that one day, like the people in eternity, they'll come up to you and be like, you actually really impacted my story. And I didn't even ever meet you, but you impacted other people that impacted me.
Yeah. Your fruit growing on other people's trees.
Yeah,
for sure. I kind of have like one like last little thought I want to throw out there and see if it brings any conversation. And then once we have that little discussion, Jesse, if you wouldn't mind, I'll have you pray us out of here. But in sermon 1 that Jesse preached, I think you used this phrase, keep calm and carry on. Do you remember saying that? Kind of like poking fun at like the meme, so to speak, is that like classic like Etsy looking poster that says keep calm and carry on.
I don't think I mentioned it, but I like it.
Okay. All right.
It's like the stork with the frog with the frog's hand around the throat, you know, or whatever.
Well, it's like this classic like poster that you see like posted, like people post on Facebook and be like, keep calm and carry on. Well, I was thinking about that and as kind of that gentle optimism that we're referencing in it. I was curious, and so I wanted to know like where that came from. And fascinating, in Europe during World War II, there were actually priests that were kind of consulted with and were asked like, hey, what are we going to do to help the people get through this really, really trying time? And when I initially saw the poster, like keep calm and carry on, I thought, I was like, what a cheap statement. You know what I mean? That just felt like sentimentalism. But I think there's a balance of like a lightheartedness that comes when we just embrace the reality that like God's writing the story and the hope we have in him. It both allows us to hold on to small little statements like, hey, let's just keep calm and carry on. While also recognizing that like, while that poster was plastered in 2.5 million different locations, there were men on the other side of the world fighting a war. And I think that like is such an adequate like tension of there's a war going on for our souls, for our kids, for the world that we're engaging in, but via the hope of Christ, we can actually operate in the peace of keep calm, carry on. And I think that's just such an interesting demonstration of the tension that can exist when there's really hard stuff, but God's hope is really good.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I think when we live that way, operate in that place, we can enjoy the little moments, the little wins.
Yeah.
But we hold it in its rightful place to know that, when there's a lot going on, we're in the middle of a war, that God's sovereign, God's in control. There's a plan that he's writing, even if we can't see it.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's good. All right, man. Want to pray us out of here?
Yeah. Jesus, we love you, and we thank you for this conversation. We thank you for the book of Ruth, for the hope that it brings to us, knowing, God, that you are writing our stories, that you have a redemptive plan in place. And so I know there's many people that will be listening to this, watching this, that are in the middle of pain, that have circumstances in their life that are trying, that are discouraging, where maybe they feel up against the wall. And I pray, God, even in this moment, that you would bring them hope, maybe a new perspective, that you would bring them a peace, God, that you are writing their story, God, that you have a plan, that you are God, you are sovereign and in control, and that through that they would be able to experience joy and peace and love this Christmas season, God. I pray that through your strength, through your spirit, that we can keep calm and carry on.
Amen.
Yeah. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.